But otherwise, let's see. Thank you again for joining us. It sounds like you've got a great kind of collaborative study here to share. So we're really looking forward to hearing more about it. And with that, you can feel free to take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. So it's great to be here. Can you guys hear me okay and see me okay? Awesome. I love getting an opportunity to present at this conference because it is our people. It's all the people that are thinking about graduate student teaching professional development in deep ways, and those of us who are on the ground sort of implementing this stuff. So I'm going to be sharing a study with you that we've been working on for about a year and a half now. I am Grant Gardner. I'm a professor of biology at Middle Tennessee State University. Um, and oops, now scroll now. There we go. Um, these are my collaborators. Many of them are old-time biotap folks. So Beth, Chris, Gilly, these were all some of the originators of this biotap group. And
Don't
then,
say old.
yeah, thanks, Gilly. Um, Eric was a postdoc on this grant, who is now currently an assistant professor at St. John's, who did a lot of this work as well. Um, So I don't want to spend a lot of time sort of justifying the value of graduate student teaching professional development like we would in maybe a more general talk, because I think all of us here are kind of aware of why it's important and some of the reasons that it's challenging to implement at universities. So I do want to just start with saying that our group recently has been thinking a lot about the organizational structures in which graduate student teaching professional development exists. And you'll see me use this acronym GSTPD. That's my acronym for graduate student teaching professional development. And we tried to better understand sort of the cultures. And in this case, there is some literature out there that shows in academia, the department is an important organizational unit that can impact sort of what happens to various activities, departmental activities. And so we asked these research questions. We were really interested in understanding what it was about departmental culture that can support graduate student teaching professional development or can serve as a barrier. And to do this, we had to first kind of understand what culture was and to think about ways that we could look at culture. It's incredibly complex, and the literature has various ways out there to think about defining culture. We have settled on this model by Reinholz and Apkarian. It's called the Four Frames model or taxonomy. I call it a taxonomy of teaching culture because it's relatively simple and straightforward to use. And the Four Frames essentially says that when we want to think about culture, we can think about four different components that help define cultures. There's the people, and this is the folks that are there on the ground, the diversity of folks, and then not only that, but their goals, their needs, their agency, their identity, the roles they play in that department. And tightly connected to people is the interactions between those people. Those interactions are often mediated by power, whether it's status, positioning, politics, other types of power dynamics. The third component of culture are the structures. These are sort of the non-abstract things that are in place, whether they're official titles and roles or responsibilities, the practices, routines, and other sort of space, other things like that that are structures in a department that can define culture. And finally, tightly linked to structures is this idea of symbols. And these are more of the abstract, sort of unspoken cultural artifacts, language, knowledge, values, things that are harder to pin down, maybe are less clearly defined in like policy documents, but exist in some very real way within cultures. And so we've used this taxonomy to think about culture and think about how biology departments specifically manifest these four things. All right, so I just wanted to remind you real quickly of our research questions now that I've given you a sense of what I mean when I say culture. And so what we asked again are what are the cultural factors that support offering graduate student teaching professional development, and what might be these barriers? To answer this question, we conducted a study that is known as a Delphi method. All right. The goal, if you're not familiar with a Delphi method or methodology, the goal is articulated there on this slide, but it's to reach a reliable consensus among a group of experts on some type of complex issue. In our case, this complex issue was what is it about culture that can impede or support the implementation of graduate student teaching professional development? And you might also ask what we mean by experts. Well, this was a conversation we had a lot of conversations about, excuse me, who are graduate student teaching professional development experts. And we leveraged a lot of things like this BioTap listserv, in fact, as one way to access folks who are either practitioners or researchers in the graduate student teaching professional development space. And so that's how we defined our experts. For this particular study, we began with a sample of 48 experts that we were able to identify in this space. Once we had those experts identified, in order to start building consensus, we started with a semi-structured interview protocol. This protocol was generated to better understand the cultures, the departmental cultures around graduate student teaching professional development of these experts, and specifically thinking about cultural supports, cultural barriers, and also probing for those four different components of culture, the people, power, supports, and structures and symbols. And so we had all this interview data that then we were able to take, and from these complex, rich interviews, we constructed a list of supports and barriers for graduate student teaching professional development from these experts. Once we had that list constructed, and this consisted of 30 supports and 30 barriers, we provided these to our experts again in the form of a survey. So it was essentially a list of all 30 supports, a list of all 30 barriers, and we asked the expert participants to do a relatively simple task, although it was not quite so simple with 30 barriers and supports. We asked them to rank these in their order of importance. So kind of what were the most important supports in place if you wanted to implement graduate student teaching professional development, and what might be the most significant barriers in place that would hamper graduate student teaching professional development being implemented. Once we had that list, we then tallied up everyone's scores, took an average, and constructed a ranked list of all the components. Some of this I will share with you today in just a moment. We re-provided that rank list to all of our expert participants in a second round survey and asked them to give us feedback. Did they think this ranking was appropriate? Would they move any of the items up, down, in any significant direction? And what that allowed us to do then, after this second survey, was to develop some sort of consensus around the 30 most important supports for implementing graduate student teaching professional development and the 30 most significant barriers to hampering the implementation of graduate student teaching professional development. And so what I'm going to share with you today is just the top 10 of these, top 10 supports and top 10 barriers. Like I said, we have a list of 30. But while I do this, I would like to ask for a little bit of participation. So I have some prompts here. When I show you these supports and barriers, I would like you to, in the chat, if you don't mind, indicate which barriers and which supports resonate with you the most. Are they ones that you're like, yeah, that's definitely something that is significant or I've seen in my career, or something that's surprising, one that kind of jumps out to you as something that you did not expect. I'm also going to provide you these top 10 supports and barriers coded by our cultural categories. So the people, power, structures, and symbols. And I'd also like you to, if you'd like, in the chat, to share with us any patterns you are seeing in this data. All right? I hope that makes sense. I can't see anybody's video except Gilly since she was the last one to talk to me. So I'm assuming everyone is nodding vigorously right now and fully engaged and participating. So let me share with you this first table, and I will orient you to it, and then I'll give you a chance to provide some feedback in the chat. Now, don't provide feedback on this first table. This is just to kind of orient us. Okay, and so what you're seeing here is on the left is our top 10 list of barriers, and on the right column is our top 10 list of supports. Those statistics you see up there are just to share with you sort of the consensus values of our experts. And so sort of the higher that W, that Kendall's W value, the closer our experts were to reaching full consensus with a 1.0 would have been full consensus. On the left underneath the barriers, you have our top 10 ranked most significant barriers that might impede implementing graduate student teaching professional development. And on the right, you have our top 10 most important supports that might support graduate student teaching professional development. All right. In this next slide, I will give you a chance. I'm going to put it up and give you about 30 seconds to a minute to observe the slide and to make some comments in the chat. And so this first one is this table. And what I have done here is coded the components of both the supports and barriers that include our people and power categories. Now, I will say that we had a difficult time teasing out people and power because when you think about people and culture, they're often so entangled with how they interact in power dynamics. And so this is our list of barriers and the ones that were coded as people power and the supports ones that were coded as people power. Okay, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to take a look at this and make any comments or observations you have in the chat, and then I will switch to the next code. And I'm going to try to pull my chat up here so I can see you guys. Excellent. Great. Thank you so much. All right. Ooh, got more coming in. I don't want to kill people's momentum. These are all very helpful for us. Yeah, Lisa, we noticed that as well, that people in power have a real impact on the barriers. All right, I'm gonna, in order to maintain a little time, I'm going to move on to the next set. So again, this is our same table, but now I have it coded by structures. And so feel free to take a look here at structures. Ooh, and let me know anything you're seeing here. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of comments about the union. That was the graduate student union. That was something that was new to us too, for those of us that don't live in areas that have grad student unions. All right. Well, let me show you the last figure here. This is our symbol. So again, remember these are sort of the unspoken components of the department or some of those values and things. So feel free to provide us with any feedback or thoughts you have on that. Opportunities are important. Capsule number. Ooh, interesting, Katie. Seeing some comparisons between a fixed and growth mindset. I like that. That's interesting. All right. Excellent. All right. Thank you so much. I think I have exactly maybe a minute to 30 seconds left in my talking time. So I'm going to use this to go to my last slide, which is just my thank you slide. So I really appreciate all the feedback. I am going to request that the facilitators provide us with this feedback because I will say that currently we have these lists and our researchers have been trying to think about the meaning behind these different cultural components and also what is next. And so in my last sort of 5 minutes, I'm happy to take any questions about any of these cultural components that you found interesting or that resonated with you. I'm also happy to hear from folks if you have ideas about how we might best use this data to support departments in implementing graduate student teaching professional development. I'm going to stop my share because I want to be able to see everybody's lovely faces when they ask questions. So
Great. Thank you so, so much. That was some really cool data that came up. I'm really curious to see and hear what folks have to say. There's a lot of great comments already in the chat. Anyone want to expound on that or ask some more questions?
Yeah, I did not have an opportunity to catch everyone's comments in the chat while I was there. So please, 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 if there's something you're really passionate about or that jumps out in the chat, reiterate it for me.
Dr. Gardner, this is Frank from
How you doing, Frank? It's good to see you.
um, were there any data on those institutions that had unions in terms of the quality of their TPD?
We weren't attempting to collect data on the quality of teaching professional development. So, what we had asked our experts to do is be sort of as general as possible. So, actually decontextualize their comments. So, when we did the interviews, and I'm going to answer Melody's question here too, that I just saw pop up in the chat while I answer yours, Frank, is that yes, these list of supports and barriers came from the interviews. And when we did these interviews, we asked them to think about sort of a general department, right? Now, of course, everyone draws on their experience to sort of answer these questions, um, but we did not ask them to say what was the quality of graduate student teaching professional development because we were not able to. We don't think we can tease that out with this Delphi study just yet. Although during our interview processes, we had such rich interviews, we're actually going back to that data and trying to hone in on specific findings to understand sort of the quality and how those supports and barriers might impact quality. I'm going to go back to the chat and start picking on people if not.
We did have a question come in from Georgina. I'm surprised about these first two talks here. Hours has been brought up, and in my experience, there's very little concern about exactly how many hours um, grad students were spending on teaching. Um, Perhaps at your own institution, is that maybe what I'm hearing here?
I the program that I came out of, one of the things that my talk touches on is grad students have a lot of concerns about time management, balancing roles. That's universal. STEM, healthcare, other grad programs. The institution that I did my graduate work at, I don't remember anyone talking about specifically how many hours a week, average hours a week. It just is striking that that seems like more of a specific number at different places.
Yeah, and I think we find that it ranges, Georgina. Thanks for that question. One of the things that stood out to go back to Frank's question is in those institutions that had unions, the number of hours was very highly considered, right? Because the unions, the graduate student union especially, is advocating for those workload hours, and it was very, very important. But I don't know that that was, yeah, I think that's highly variable how much people care about that in a particular context. Yeah, so I'm seeing Natalie's response there, and I know our GTAs here at MTSU, they are communicated they're expected to work about 20 hours per week, but the systems that are in place to enforce that is not really there.
Did
Yeah.
I might have missed it, but was there anything in there about GTPD being required versus optional? And did that come up at all? Or I might have missed that.
Yeah, it wasn't in those top 10, but it is a factor that came out in our data. So again, I was just showing you the top 10 to keep it a little simpler of both our supports and barriers, but that was something that came out. It just was not it didn't float up as important in those two components from our experts. Yeah, and I'm happy to share the larger list with you. We're working on the publication for this, hopefully going to get it out in the next few months here is our goal. So.